Today we're joined by Matt Palmer, developer relations and developer marketing expert, formerly of Replit, vibe coder, and weightlifting enthusiast. The AI boom has minted a lot of winners, but no category has absorbed more value than coding assistance. So what happens to developer marketing when everyone is a developer? I'm Helen, and today we're joined by Ashley and Matt. Great Chat is brought to you by Mercury, radically different banking loved by over 300,000 entrepreneurs. We use Mercury to run this podcast and love recommending it to other founders and fund managers. It's free to get started. Try it for yourself. Visit mercury.com to learn more and apply in minutes.
Hey guys.
Hi guys. Matt, that's when you say hi.
Oh, wait. All right, we're getting there. All right. Sweet.
Matt,
yeah,
welcome to the pod.
Yeah,
it's
welcome
a great
to
thing
the
we
pod,
have an editor
Matt.
for this. Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
It's great to be here. You know?
Did you guys read the SF social scene led by the Terminally Online post last week?
Made me sad.
Well, I read it, got sad because I'm like, oh, I guess this is what the kids are doing. But then I got actually like a ton of messages about it, or I was in some group chats with like true SF Gen Zers who were like, that's not how it is at all. And this is so out of touch. And I was like, oh, okay, that's good. But curious, Matt, what did you think?
There's some truth to it, but I think largely out of touch with reality.
Well, what do you mean by that specifically?
Well, I think that there is a group of people who are terminally online in San Francisco that do get together and throw parties, but I think that that's a much smaller portion of the population than people tend to assume.
They're just the ones telling us all they're doing it all the time.
Yeah, exactly. A vocal minority, I think.
Somebody was like, can you imagine if any of these people tried to get into a club in LA? I'm like, yeah, that's right. There's a whole world outside of San Francisco. But one thing I thought was kind of interesting, there was a young woman who said, like, I'm terminally online, I go to these things, and I always leave feeling kind of sad. That there's almost like this, kind of dynamic where everyone's sizing each other up and like how many followers you have and how popular you are. The internet has democratized like a lot of things, and I think that was really inspiring and cool. But like when there's like an in-group and an out-group, kind of like the same dynamics just reappear of like exclusion. And there's a whole movie about this called Mean Girls. When Katie gets really popular, she's like kind of turns into an asshole.
I have a young friend who moved to San Francisco, and what she described felt so different from the San Francisco in my 20s when I worked in startups. Like it was so status driven. And like, it was more about like where you worked, like what role you have at what company was sort of the ticket in to like whether you belong or not. And there was some of that, I guess, like in the prior era, but not nearly at the level. I think there are really only like a handful of companies that like quote unquote matter right now. And so if you're not at those companies, and also, we've shared commentary in our group chat about being an early stage founder is no longer necessarily high status. Like it's lower status than having an operator role at some of these sexy companies. And so it's just interesting that status has become this pretty significant metric in a community that just used to be a bunch of nerds and oddballs. So yeah, I'm happy to hear the blog post isn't representative, but someone should write a piece on like status in San Francisco. I would eagerly read that.
Well, Matt, you were talking about one, right?
Yeah, so there's another Twitter article that I think went kind of semi-viral about like the SF group chat, which is like a metaphorical group chat. The main point of the article is that there is like some, cadre of people in San Francisco who interpret who you are or form opinions on who you are based on what you post online, based on the fact that you're terminally online. And so it's not a literal group chat, but you can create a reputation for yourself for better or worse by being terminally online, essentially. This weekend, basically, I went to several parties with people who are terminally online, and then my friends and I went out afterward. And so, right, it's like, okay, I was in these environments where people would come up to me and be like, what are you building? Which I hate. I hate it when people do that. And then we went out to like bar part-time.
Oh, lovely.
Awesome spot. And it's like, this is where the actual normal people are. None of these people are going to recognize me from Twitter or whatever. And if you ask somebody what they're building, they're just going to like laugh in your face. So
a tale of two cities.
Exactly. And this is what people don't understand. And I actually think this is where a lot of the kind of clash comes in with people who are very like status driven in tech space or in the startup space. They come into San Francisco and they're all, 996, look at my startup, I'm so cool. And then they wonder why they can't date anyone or they don't have any friends. And it's like, okay, well, you're losing access to 99% of the city if all you think about is your AI startup or your, agent that you're building.
This isn't like a totally new trend. Matt, it looks like you're pretty on Twitter. I'm pretty on Twitter too. And there are a lot of contacts I made and relationships I built because of my participation in that community. But the way you gained status online previously was like being funny. Like if you had good jokes about things. And now it's very performative. It's like, this is my OpenClaw setup and like, 996 performative productivity. Like I think people would have been kind of a little turned off by that maybe 10 years ago. And now that's the way to the top of the social ranking. So I'm opting out of this wave.
I still think that you have to be funny. Like I think that all of these accounts that have gotten huge followings, there's like a wittiness and a cleverness to the content that they share.
I don't know. There's a lot of rage baiting. There's a lot of like, you're doing it wrong.
There's a lot of that.
I miss funny Twitter. Twitter used to be a lot funnier. There's a lot of shit posting, which is like a form of humor, but is a little bit different than I think the earlier vibe.
Well, Matt, I was curious what you thought about this. I saw this like sneak peek of Claude's cooking up something in the vibe coding space, or Anthropic's cooking up something, with Claude code, and it lets you ship like, full stack apps, maybe. And so thinking about like players in that category, I guess Replit included, Lovable, there's many. We, I guess, always had a hunch that the models would get into this game eventually.
I mean, this felt inevitable.
But like now was the kind of the first time where we've seen something. What do you think, and how is the community reacting to that?
Well, I've seen a bit of buzz about it online so far, and I think every time Anthropic kind of edges into that territory, there's like a response, right? There were first artifacts a few years ago, or I guess a year ago at this point, where you could just write HTML or JavaScript and get like something very simple, like a preview in Claude, but that didn't really go anywhere. And we've seen, Google with AI Studio and some of these other things that they're building do similar things. I'm not too concerned about that. I think there'll still be a place for Lovable and Replit and all these tools because how much of it is like cloud services, right? Can you build like a full stack application or have a database or have object storage or have all these essentially developer tools built into your app? I think, for people that just want to build a portfolio site or a landing page, like that's definitely squarely in the target here. But another opinion that I have, which we can get into more, is that I haven't seen exactly the best product sense from the labs lately. And so I think the market is so big that there's so many different types of products you can develop. And it wouldn't surprise me if this just is a test from Anthropic, or they're just like putting out something that's a bit more surface level rather than a real product.
Well, I feel like OpenAI was playing that game like a year ago, where like their developer day, to me, the takeaway from their developer day was basically like, hi, everyone, we've gathered you here and just to say, please don't bother because we've got that category and this one and this one and this one and this one. And everyone left like, okay. And so I kind of feel it's a smart move, right? Because I think the questions that VCs ask is like, oh, well, how will you compete against, one of the model companies or big tech companies? And so, I think that sort of like going on the offensive is something that is probably just smart for them to do.
Yeah, I don't disagree, but like there are all these things from Developer Day, for example, apps in ChatGPT. How many people actually use apps in ChatGPT? I don't know anybody, right? Like maybe you use these, but like OpenAI also announced the ability to like build agents. I was at Developer Day last year, so I remember these things. Build agents in the browser. I don't know anybody that uses that at all, right? Anthropic's announcing the same things, actually, like the ability to build agents using Claude Code and the ability to create applications. Do these become real products? I don't know. Or are they just trying half-baked ideas? I have no idea.
Well, what about the new Anthropic model that's just too powerful for release? Did you guys
It's too powerful.
see that one?
I don't even think we
I
can
like
talk
the
about
memes.
it.
Cynical.
The memes are so good.
On the one hand, if you take the story at face value, it's like, oh, thank goodness Anthropic is being so responsible and like not releasing Mythos into the world for cybersecurity reasons. But I'm getting like cynical now. Like I'm like, Anthropic is too good at storytelling. And I'm just like, oh, this is such a self-serving narrative. Like, oh, this model, it's like so powerful. We can't even give it to you. It would just like destroy the world. And so we're gonna create this council. And I mean, it's probably like there's probably both truth to the rhetoric, but also it's very much rhetoric, and it's very much intended to like build a lot of hype and excitement ahead of their, supposed IPO later this year. So I do love how it's become a meme of like, well, I can't release this because it's too powerful.
Did you see this TikTok video of this like British woman talking about how marketing roles have been, what's the phrase? Masculine,
Masculinized.
which I did not know if that was an actual word, but basically talking about how there's all these like growth engineering roles. And, she's just like scrolling through LinkedIn of all these posts of new jobs that when you read the job description, you're just like, that used to be a social media manager, or that used to be somebody who, trafficked a bunch of ads. That got me wondering if the whole like, oh, we don't need a marketer, we need a growth hacker is back. And, you brought this up earlier about how like comms people also went through something where it was like, oh, comms people, yeah, that's PR. We need a storyteller. And so it just feel like we're going through these different phases. And I saw some dialogue of people clapping back on like I am actually a growth engineer and here's how it's different from marketing.
Totally, it's a real role.
Yeah, it is a real role. But I mean, even storyteller to me feels maybe female coded. Like,
it's funny because comms people are usually called PR people, and PR is kind of like a subset of comms.
Right,
and so we're always like, no, we're comms people. People tried to make storytelling happen, and it just sounded so douchey. But now it's been embraced. And yes, I think it's less gendered than like the marketer to growth hacker, but definitely like a rebranding to make something that has been around for a while sound new. I wonder if we just start slapping engineer on everything, because in theory, people are now building a lot of technology to do their jobs, and so just like, does engineer become meaningless as a term? And do we have to find like a new word for the actual engineers to like designate them from like the people engineers and the operations engineers, and that it's just going to be everyone.
Yeah, front desk person is like office experience engineer. Not wrong.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But there are no limits to this. And then we will truly have 100% male workforces as everybody wants, which is a great segue into why Matt is here today.
I was like, I'm just staying out of this conversation.
So Matt and I connected over developer marketing and developer relations, like, how do they overlap? How do they intersect? Are they adjacent? And I think that for a lot of AI companies that are targeting developers, there's a real bleed and an overlap here. And so just a little bit of context on how we think about developer marketing, because it means, I think, different things to different people. And it's definitely something different in 2026 than it was like when I first started, talking about that openly and started recruiting for roles at Plaid. So like the concept isn't new, right? It's like when I think about developer marketing and DevRel, it's like the Steve Ballmer, shouting developers on stage with the sweaty armpits.
For our Gen Z listeners, go look that
exactly.
up. It's a classic moment. He's very passionate.
Exactly, but like developers have always been really important to Microsoft, right? And they get this idea that whoever wins developers is who wins the platform. And there have been many companies, like SaaS companies, that have like also gone through this wave. Slack had a really big developer team. Square had like a really big developer effort. I don't know if it was successful or not, but like Stripe is a great company that, I think started really with how do you create a great developer brand. And so I think now when AI is really like kind of broadening the definition of who is a developer, right? Like the number of people who are picking up, a computer and learning how to code, or like, using vibe coding.
All those growth engineers.
All those growth engineers, or they're just prompting, right? And they're building, right? It's undeniable that they're building. Are those folks developers now? And how do we think about them in the context of developer marketing? And so Matt, most recently you were running DevRel and Dev Marketing at Replit, and kind of curious, based on your experience there and other folks that you've talked to, how does a company think about like allocating investment across audiences when they're both trying to reach like novice builders, right? People who would probably identify as non-technical, who are absolutely like building things, undeniably now, versus like the true, engineer who's been, building with code for most of their lives? Like, is there a distinction? Is there a difference now?
Absolutely. I mean, there still is a difference. You have to understand who you're talking to. And if you think about, developer marketing or developer relations in the traditional sense, you mentioned companies like, right, Stripe, or I would add Twilio, or some of these other companies that were built on developer marketing. You still have to have like the technical prowess and like the understanding of what these things are. You have to have developers, but then you have to be able to communicate with just like normal people. So me communicating a vibe coding tool to a developer is very different from me communicating that to, somebody who has a business, or somebody who's trying to start a business, or build a portfolio site for the first time, a college student maybe. And so it really does become more about empathy in that sense and the ability to communicate. But my opinion, and especially when I was like hiring for these roles, is you still need an engineer, because I can't go out and tell a plumber why they need a database in their application that collects signups without understanding what a database is and how it fits into that architecture. But then I also need to be able to explain it in terms they would understand around like persistent data. You have to really simplify things. So I think it becomes more important now than ever to have people who understand the concepts, who are developers. But then kind of what we were talking to earlier, like having these storytellers, having traditional marketers who can take the importance of these technical concepts and then relay that to folks who are otherwise like completely non-technical or semi-technical. And that's a pretty rare quality, as it would turn out.
Well, how do you like balance the two? Because I assume that there's probably this like delicate balance that you need to strike where like if you're going out there with too generic and like approachable of a message, maybe like more hardcore developers would be like, whoa, this is not for people like me. I don't want to use it anymore. When it is absolutely for people like them, right? It's just like the audience has gotten larger. So like, is that like a sort of tension that you've seen companies struggle with? And how do you think that you do that well?
Absolutely. I mean, it's a tension I think everyone's struggling with currently, because the market is so big. You have companies like Replit that want to go out and say, hey, we're for everyone. We're for your grandma. Grandma can build a bunch of apps. In reality, she probably can't yet. Like I wish. My mom doesn't want to be vibe coding anything. I was very, very clear. She's not on her phone. So she's probably not actually the target audience, but then they'll go out and they'll say, but look, our tools are so powerful. Like you could use this. Engineers could use this. And when you do that, you ostracize both of those people, because engineers try this thing out and they say, this isn't for me. The super non-technical people try it out and they say, this is too powerful, right? And so I think there's actually a huge problem today, which is that people in the market, people in the like AI coding market, they have no idea who they're building for, right? And what you get with products that in that sense are products that are for no one and for everyone at the same time. But I think the market is just so giant and it's expanding so rapidly that it actually doesn't matter. Like Claude Code can just go out and be Claude Code. And then, it's a terminal. And people are like confused about what the heck's going on. But it's such a magical tool, like the technology, the AI, and the harness, that people are going to like figure out ways to get value out of it anyway. And that's just because the models are amazing. This technology is amazing. So that's kind of how I feel about the whole thing.
Is it possible that like technical and non-technical are the wrong buckets? Like, could it be more of a like psychographic or like what people are aiming to do? Because I agree. I feel like that's limiting. And if you pick one lane, it's like harder to appeal to the other. And this is maybe where I see some companies like really focus on like builders as their audience, right? Which is like a more expansive term than developers. I think Lovable did this very well. Replit does this, like where it's more like, oh, like you're a person who is creating things and this tool is for you. And then like how technical you are is kind of secondary to that inherent motivation to build.
100%. And, I think you even miss this if you go into like personas, because you could have, let's talk about marketers, for example. You could have a marketer that just doesn't want to do things the new way, right? Versus a growth engineer who is very, build or coded or whatever, and is like always pushing that. I think about it a lot in terms of like agency. Do you want to go out and learn new things? The same people who are going to be successful with a Google Sheet are going to be successful with AI, right? Because it's hard to like learn the formulas, to like figure stuff out, to like actually build with that tool. In the same way, it's hard to be a developer. You have to figure a lot of stuff out, and these tools are making it easier for people, but it's still difficult. And you still have to like try and fail over and over again and experiment. And so it really, to your point, is about that. And I think a company that did this really well, maybe in a prior era, is Apple, right? Apple is for creatives. Apple is for people that are pushing it, right? Like if you're a student, you buy a Mac because that's like for serious people who create things, right? you don't want to be Windows guy. You don't want to just like have your like ThinkPad.
It's a lifestyle brand.
Exactly. It is a lifestyle. And so I
Yeah.
think the way you separate these things and what, Lovable has done very well, what Replit is trying to do and is doing better, is marketing yourselves for people who classify themselves as either like professionals, not in the sense that you have a job, but like the sense that you do your job well and you pride yourself in the work that you put out, or like builders or creatives or people that think about themselves this way. And in that way, you're self-selecting into a group of people that's going to be successful, right? If you have someone who's a builder and I say, I figure out hard things and I come to the product, like, okay, I'm actually going to be successful because I'm putting effort into the product versus going out and saying, hey, this tool is for a 4-year-old. If you're a 4-year-old, you can build an app. And then you get everybody coming in dissatisfied because they don't just magically get applications that work.
Yeah, I mean, I also think that there is probably like a generational shift happening where like I think young, kids who are like K through 8 kids today are probably interacting with things like this much earlier than we did. And that's like our parents telling us about they had computer class when they went to school, right? Like, so every generation sort of like sees this a different way, but there's always this part of me that's like, well, and especially if you're a parent, like your kids just are who they are. Like they're born a certain way and some people are going to be inclined towards some things versus another. And it's like with MySpace, there were the people who were going to take the time to customize their like skin and like get into the HTML, and like do the fun colors and the music and like the effects on their page. And then there were the people who were just like, yeah, that looks cool, but like I'm not gonna like open that up, right? And that's fine. It doesn't mean like you're not gonna make it, but I think that there are just some people who are just like excited about those things, and some people who are like, I'm gonna pay for that, or I'm gonna, ask my buddy to do it for me because I don't trust myself. And that's where I think the real buckets are versus like technical versus non, if that makes sense. In Silicon Valley, we really do reward builders, and we've made builders like the highest, sort of thing that everybody talks about, right? Like even venture capitalists refer to themselves as capital builders or whatever. It's just like, this is the thing. And
Oh God, no, we don't.
no, I've seen some things. And that's the ultimate status, and why we, have so many toys targeted at kids who are apparently going to be coding something like at age 3. And so I don't think that that's pervasive. I don't think that that's everywhere. I think it's very much in this bubble. That's kind of my point.
I agree with a lot of those characteristics that you're describing. And these things about like paying attention to details on your MySpace profile is much more like taste, attention to detail, conscientiousness, having opinions, and just like being relentless with expressing who you are and what you care about. And those are the same qualities that I see that matter in companies and products and all of the same things. Like these haven't changed, but now you actually have agency if you're non-technical to go out and make those things versus not being able to do that a year ago, right?
Okay, well, you just said the T word.
I want to vomit every time I hear taste, but that is because it is like the most overused word in my Twitter feed.
I forgot that word is now blacklisted and I'm not allowed to say it anymore, but
You have to take a drink every time you say it.
No, I mean, I think it's kind of like having an eye for beauty and an understanding like what beauty is in some ways. I went to a liberal arts school. This is something that I've been interested in my whole life. Like aside from engineering, aside from all of these things, it's like art and understanding what beauty is and having an eye and attention to detail and like thinking about how I can make like my apartment look beautiful for like the content that I shoot, right? And what that means, I think, is different to everyone. But if you're building an app or you're building something, it's like, well, thinking about a little bit of is empathy, right? How do other people perceive this thing? A lot of it is having your own opinions. What do I think is beautiful, and how can I like express that through, like my lived experiences, these unique things that have come from my life. And so I think it's like a little bit of everything, but it does boil down to like opinionatedness and having the like vocabulary or the introspection to be able to express that opinion.
Well, I mean, I think that what you just said about like having a diverse set of interests and a liberal arts background, I mean, that's something that like we talk about all the time. It's like generalists, and in the AI era where like anybody can build, or it's easier to build than ever, or we've taken like the cost of building like down to zero, what persists? And it, I think it's kind of like choosing what to build, right? Like that's one sort of discerning thing. And then it's like, how are the small little decisions that you made, how is that different from somebody else's, or how does your thing appeal to a certain group more than another? And I actually think that it's more important than ever, ironically, in this era, to like touch grass, where you're like actually getting out and talking to real people and like engaging in activities outside of, that aren't centered around building. But do you like see that? I mean, do people share that opinion? Or, I mean, because we talk about, we just started this, pod today talking about like the terminally online and how every conversation is around building. Like, how do you like hold these two things true, where having an outside perspective and a diverse set of interests actually helps you build something that's more differentiated?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's just kind of having a well-balanced life, which many people do not have. And this really does tie directly into what we were talking at the start, is that, you have all these people that come to San Francisco because they hear like this is the place to like build products or be a builder or whatever. And then they spend 100 hours a week. They spend all their time engrossed in this thing. It's actually not productive, because past a certain point, you're not doing anything productive for anybody. And it results in a lower quality of work and being obsessed in the space and not being able to talk like a human or bring outside experiences into the city. And then you have tech companies that go out and say, hey, we need a bunch of storytellers because everybody in this city doesn't know what the heck they're talking about. They're all crazy,
Slap
right?
some narrative on this thing.
And like all it actually is like, hey, this weekend I'm gonna not work and go out and go on a hike, or I'm gonna go to the Monet exhibition at the De Young Museum, and I'm gonna like look at something beautiful and think about something that's not tech. And then I get inspired because these are historically and truly beautiful things. I'm going to bring that into the work that I do. And it looks like, reading books, watching movies, like just being a human, talking to people. You can take lessons. I think the people who are the best at what they do are always working in some sense, which is like contrary to what I just said, right? But the way that I'm working is like I'm going out and I'm observing beautiful things, or things that are pragmatic, or things that other human beings have done that are amazing. And I'm thinking, well, okay, like, does that apply to my own work or my own life? Or how do I integrate that in things that I'm trying to accomplish? And in some sense that, creates your view. It makes it unique and differentiated from the views of everybody else, because you have different life, right? And so I think these are like the intangibles that people don't understand. It's like, look, man, actually me going to the gym and like spending 2 hours working out is actually better for me like at work than trying to work for another 4 hours, right? Because it's going to bring a different perspective. It's going to change the way that I think about things. And I think that this is what a lot of people in San Francisco miss out on.
Do you feel like employers are catching on to that? Do you feel like founders are like seeking people with, sort of like these more well-rounded lives and interests? Because I don't see it, is unfortunate. Like, I do hear about it every now and then, like, oh, this person got hired. They're kind of going to be this like taste maker and sort of like be the, they want to build the brand around this. We've seen different companies like sort of dabble in this stuff, but I struggle to kind of see like a broad agreement or adoption of this sort of, I mean, I hope it's true.
The pendulum always swings, right? Like, and right now we're at one extreme
The generalist
where it's like
stage.
996 in the office all the time, and like what is scarce is actually like inspiration and creative. And I agree, like you need to like step away to do those things. My guess though is like we're so like the people who are the loudest online are not necessarily representative of what's like actually happening in a lot of workplaces. And so what is scarce right now is like the inspiration and creativity. I want to say something like a little bit controversial, which is I actually feel like vibe coding, I don't want to say it's like antithetical to taste, but it has made me appreciate taste in software in a way that I did not when I was solely a user of software and not a builder of software. Like most of what I vibe code is like kind of shitty. Like I can automate workflows and that's fine. But when I've tried to make apps, I'm like, okay, I made this app, but like it's kind of ugly and it sucks. And it's just made me appreciate the artistry that goes into creating really beautiful software, and has made me appreciate actual like software engineers and how they think about the world and do that. I mean, I know there's also like product and design and all of that. And so I do think it's funny that this like question of taste is coming up at a time when like all of us have these new tools in our hands, but we haven't necessarily all been trained on like how to think about software creation beyond just like, oh, I have this problem that I want to solve. And, it feels very linear. And then the more you get into it, you're like, oh, like I I don't know, maybe I'll go buy this thing that someone who professionally created. I feel like this is like the best of times and the worst of times for developer marketing. And in this case, I'm talking about like actual developers, engineers, technical people, because this is the category where there is the earliest product market fit for AI, right? Has been with this subset. And it gives people these like incredible superpowers in a way that I don't think the rest of us have like really experienced yet. We're starting to get there with things like Claude Cowork and, and Replit, et cetera. But like, I think my husband's a software engineer, and like what he can do with this technology is amazing. And it's completely changed the way he works and builds. And so in that sense, it's like wonderful, like the most amazing time ever to be like a technical person. And at the same time, like the overall rhetoric is like, these jobs are being automated. Dario's been like, there will be no, software engineers as we've historically had them in this time frame. How do you address people in the midst of that complexity, where on the one hand, like the best tools you've ever had, and on the other hand, these tools kind of make a lot of the skills you've built over the years obsolete, or at least like push you so far up the stack that your job is indistinguishable from what it once was?
Yeah, so just to be specific, you're talking about like talking to developers who are more classically trained, and how do you what's like the message that's going to resonate with them?
Totally. Not the builders, not the non-technical people who are like, I can do this now. The people who we have put at the top of the totem pole in Silicon Valley for like a very long time, and they are like the first to be automated out.
Yeah, the two reactions I have to that is one anecdotal, which is I have a lot of early Facebook and Dropbox friends who, because of the outcomes of those companies, like retired, who have recently said, holy crap, I just started coding again. And none of this was possible. I can only imagine if I had access to this back when I was working, and grinding, what would have been possible. So a lot of them are so inspired by these tools that they are coming back into software engineering roles, and in many cases starting companies, in also many cases like joining Anthropic or OpenAI. And then the second is like, I think there's this new narrative emerging that it's not that, oh, these tools are going to take my job. It's now actually just going to increase the expectation of how much I can do. And that is, burdensome in some ways, but also incredibly inspiring in others, right? It's like, holy crap, like now there are these tools built for me as a developer that can enable me to build things that would have taken a year in, a very short amount of time. And I think that language, I think, is the path forward for most of these developers. It's much less of like, adopt these tools and work yourself out of a job. And it's more like with this now, you're going to be promoted faster, or you are now going to be able to, show all of these other facets of your talents.
But a lot of the layoffs have been technical teams. I mean, there is the reality. I so agree with you. And like, I think that's like the right messaging for companies. But then at the same time, there's like,
I think there's nuance. And I do think that, and this is not discussed broadly, but it's like, if you've worked at a big tech company, there are definitely like different types of engineers. And I think that there are certain groups of engineers that do sort of more repetitive work. And I do think that if those engineers are not inclined to take on more or raise their hand and get so excited about like all of the agency, like the moment where they can like step up and now take on more, like, I think we're paying attention to it really carefully with the engineering thing, because it's like, it's a narrative violation or whatever. It's the thing that we're like looking at, but I think it's actually happening across every role.
So I have a couple of thoughts on this. And this comes from someone who is a developer, and I know our audience is a little less technical. So I think there are competing effects here. First, I think every tech company overhired throughout COVID, and that hasn't completely course corrected yet. And so it's actually a very convenient like narrative to go, oh, AI is automating jobs. It's not that just we were incompetent and hired too many people 3 years ago and then couldn't get rid of them. It's that AI exists now. And so now we can like let these people go, and it actually makes us look better. Now our stock goes up because we're automating or something. We're not just like managing poorly. So I think that's one thing when you see these layoffs. And then second, like to Helen's point, what is engineering? It's like the ability to write code. Maybe that's not actually what makes a good engineer. If you think about what makes like a really good engineer and the types of people that end up being engineering leaders, it's the ability to communicate, the ability to bring people together, the ability to break down large problems into manageable tasks and then determine the best way to execute on those tasks, right? So if your entire job is centering like buttons on web pages or like making the red button blue, you might want to like think about different things to do in the next couple of years, right? Because I can do that with AI, like without writing any code, right? But if your job is like running an engineering team and managing like all of this complicated infrastructure, thinking about infrastructure optimizations, AI currently can't do that. Now, maybe there's a world where AI can do that in the future, but I think that the right thing to optimize for is these higher level like project management, people management, communication skills. If you make your identity trying to be, your whole identity is trying to be the best at this one very technical skill, that's actually a really good way to be unhappy. Because if you want to be the 0.1%, only 0.1% of people are in the 0.1%. And so it's much more likely you're not going to be there. Now, with like a lot of hard work, maybe, but now we're finding that code is something that a machine can do. And so if you're going to like spend your entire life thinking, I want to be, the best at writing SQL or like some random technical language and a computer's better than you at that, it doesn't seem like a very good way to be happy. So to your point, I think that there does need to be an identity shift, maybe away from pure technical skill and into some of these other like more intangibles or like project management skills.
Who do you guys think is nailing this right now? One of our I think recurring themes on this podcast is because the technology is so amazing, I think the storytelling and the marketing has been like a little slower to catch up, right? Because it's just like the power of the tools is so obvious. Yeah. And so I'm curious from a developer marketing perspective, who is crushing it? Or are there specific campaigns or examples that come to mind for you?
We work in tech. Tech is always the most exciting thing. So it's central to everyone's message, if you're a tech company, is just the amazingness of the tech, right? It's so powerful. It's so fast. It's low latency, et cetera, et cetera. This model is so much better than the last model. And so I don't ever think that that's going to go away. That said, we're now in this sort of like maximum point of how many people can say that just out of necessity, you're going to see certain players say like, oh, in order to differentiate myself, I'm actually going to do something different. So like, I thought the Notion sort of campaign that they did a couple of weeks ago about like how going forward, it's going to take people to, building. I thought that like broke through and confirmed that like, oh, that is such a differentiated message. I saw Lovable had a couple of videos that came out in the last couple of weeks that talked about that as well, like really putting the human face behind building right in front of the code. I do think we're going to start seeing companies take some risk and try to differentiate themselves in this way because they have to. Especially if you're not the best, right? Like, especially if you're like number two, you got to stand for something else.
It's interesting because you can kind of see everyone copying each other. There was a good tweet about this where it's like every AI like product launch video or video looks exactly the same. There's like a lot of wood and a lot of plants and then like this weird bookshelf behind the people for some reason.
And then like a montage of like cartoons and then historical clips and then like text, and it's just like the same video editor is doing all of these videos.
Yeah, and then you have MF Doom on the sound. It's like, okay, we're all copying this like one Anthropic video that came out earlier this year, or like like the OpenAI out of home, like the giant advertisements, which I actually really like if you've ever seen one in person. Yeah. But they almost look identical to the Anthropic stuff, like some of the Anthropic imagery, and like the color grading is the same, and it like looks and it feels very similar. And to your point, right, like it's every AI company is like, we need to focus more on people. It's like, that's really great. That's what everybody's saying exactly the same thing now. So I will give credit to Lovable. I think Lovable punches way above their weight for where the product's at. And they do a good job with marketing.
Ooh, nice little dig in there too. I heard that.
It's good. It's
no
good.
Comment. But the marketing is really good, and I appreciate that as a marketer. But I think that everybody is kind of like looking around at each other. And the real, like, what makes great marketing great is like the ability to say, I'm going to do something completely different from the rest of what everybody else is doing, rather than kind of like going with the grain.
Well, thanks for joining us, Matt.
No, it was really great to be on. I appreciate it. It was great to speak with you both. Thank
you for listening to Great Chat. Have questions for us? Make sure to submit them at anothergreatchat.com. See you next week. Thank you.